The EcoFlow Glacier is by far the most feature-packed fridge on the market. But for a 4x4 Overlander, is it still practical and relevant? In this video, I will share my real-world experience as well as some unexpected findings. Make sure you stick to the end where I will show you my favorite feature of the Glacier. And no, it is not the ice maker. Alright, let's get started. Hi, welcome to Tinker's Adventure. I'm Kai. In spring 2021, my wife and I took a long road trip from Pennsylvania to Moab, Utah. I brought some breakfast sausage that needs to be frozen and some eggs that should not. My Dometic CFX40 was a single-zone fridge, but back when I purchased it, the sales rep told me the top shelf is called a dairy compartment, and it is designed to be at a higher temperature. Basically, a pseudo dual zone. So I left my eggs up here and set the fridge at 30 degrees. This setup has always worked for my weekend trips, but things were different in this much longer trip. Around day 4, all my eggs were frozen and cracked because with long enough time, everything inside eventually reached thermal equilibrium. Since that incident, I always wanted a true dual zone fridge with independent temperature control. But the issue was, most true dual zone started around 60 quart, which was too big for my FJ. There was the Ice Cold Go 20, but that was way too small. Only until 2023, I finally found my Goldilocks. The Glacier is a true dual zone, but only at 40 quart. For my application, this is just right. As you can see, each compartment has its own temperature control and a separate evaporator for cooling. The smaller zone is still wide enough to be useful. The dual zone divider can also be removed and it automatically becomes a single zone. EcoFlow was not the first company who implemented the removable dual zone, but it is the only one I know where you can store the divider under the lid, so you'll never lose it. And this also adds insulation to the lid. And speaking of the lid, I really like it opening this way instead of the long orientation, so that it measures 9 inches lower with the lid open. Much easier to clear whatever you have above. Mounting the fridge in the trunk on some type of fridge slide is the classic Overland setup. However, I much prefer having the fridge in the back seat. During long road trip, we can easily get access to the fridge without stopping. I could do it with a long lid, but it is a much bigger hassle. At camp, accessing the fridge through the rear door is still pretty convenient, and I can save the trunk space for something else. I really like EcoFlow arrange all 40 quart in one straight compartment, as opposed to having a raised section like most other fridges. Yes, both of my fridge are 40 quart, and they can both pack 60 soda cans. The soda can number is a common spec point from the manufacturers. But come on, no one really does that. In real life, my issue was never the absolute volume, but rather some of the stuff simply didn't fit nicely. So the internal shape of the Glacier significantly improved usability. For my trip to Moab, I used this 300 watt-hour power stations to run my Dometic. It was more than enough for overnight, and I would charge it during the day. But still, I eventually ran out of juice around day 5 or 6. The key issue was slow car charging. This unit charges around 50 watts from the cigarette lighter, or 6 hours from 0 to 100. The second issue was more on me. I didn't tie it down inside my FJ. As I went up and down in Moab, the cable came off multiple times. I either lose charging or refrigeration. The Glacier solves these issues with a built-in 300 watt-hour battery pack. So you no longer have a separate power stations to worry about. The Glacier also charges a lot faster, but there are a few things you should know. If you charge it through your car's 12-volt cigarette lighter, it will still take around 4 hours from 0 to 100. Faster than 6, but still not great. The supplied AC power brick charges at 180 watt and half the charging time to 2 hours. And yes, this power brick will work with most factory inverters that are modified sine wave. In my experience, from shutting down the car in the afternoon at camp to hitting the road again in the morning, the Glacier typically drains between 25 to 50%, depending on your usage and environment. So as long as I drive about 1 hour the next day, the Glacier will be fully charged. If you are staying at one spot with no driving, you can directly plug in a solar panel using the same XC60i connector. EcoFlow rates the maximum solar input at 240 watt, but you should know that the charging power to the battery itself is still limited to 180. The extra 60 watts simply means if the compressor has to kick on, we don't need to slow down charging as much. That's why by EcoFlow's estimate, solar charging is only 0.1 hour faster than AC charging. And I can confirm that with my usage. Now, what if your car doesn't have an AC inverter, nor you want to mount solar panels while driving? Are there any other ways to achieve that 180 watt fast charging? Boy, I have a solution for you. You can simply wire a 12 to 24 volt DC to DC converter to your main battery, like this one, which is less than 40 bucks. This simulates a solar panel, but it's really from your car alternator. I use this method to fast charge my EcoFlow Delta 2 at 400 watt. The exact same principle applies here, just at much lower power. I made a video specifically for this topic. I will link that video along with a few DC converters in the description below. Some of you may consider buying this fridge without this built-in battery and just run it off the 12 volt DC. Basically, like every other fridges out there. But with this battery unplugged, I found there will be a 3 to 5 watt constant power draw, which really adds up to energy consumption. After consulting with EcoFlow, I learned that a voltage booster will kick in if the input is below 15 volt, and you don't have the internal battery, which by the way is 25 volt. You also cannot run the ice maker in this configuration. So in my opinion, unless you have a 24 volt system or higher, the Glacier doesn't really work well without the internal battery pack. Now, let's talk about the number one selling point of this fridge, the ice maker. But to be honest, I'm not a big fan. Don't get me wrong, it has excellent performance making ice, which I will show you later, but I don't want it in the first place. If you ever order bubble tea with an Asian, you'll notice a lot of them will deliberately ask for no ice. I am one of those. I'm just not an ice guy. Nevertheless, when I asked multiple friends who also do car camping, all of them were very excited about the ice maker. Oh, I can do whiskey on rocks, smoothies, put ice in my Nalgene bottle before hiking, this and that. So I guess I am the minority here. For me, I would ditch the ice maker and make the whole thing smaller. Despite both my fridges being 40 quart, the Glacier is 2 inches longer, excluding handles. The width and height are nearly identical, but for my setup, the extra 2 inches in length did create some challenges in fitting. But for those who doesn't have the exact same setup as mine, or just really love the ice maker, the extra 2 inch is probably not a big deal. But wait a minute, as we saw earlier, the main compartment in the Glacier is already 3 inches longer. On top of that, we added a built-in battery and an ice maker. How the hell is the overall length only 2 inches longer? Turns out, the Glacier has over 25% thinner walls than my Dometic. You might think, damn, this is not good for insulation. But actually, I found this to be the coolest part of this design. Instead of traditional foam insulation, the Glacier uses vacuum insulation panel, VIP. EcoFlow didn't extensively market this technology, and this picture is simply smoke and mirrors. So I purchased Unreal VIP to test them out. In comparison, this is a 1-inch thick XPS foam from the Home Depot. If we factor in the thickness, the VIP is 16 times the cost per unit volume. Note that most portable fridge uses polyurethane foam with a slightly better R value per inch than polystyrene, but this is what I could easily get. On the other hand, VIP supposed to have R30 per inch. Our panel is half-inch thick, so this is an R15. In theory, still 3 times better than this. To test out how much better the VIP actually is, I first made some ice cubes using the Glacier. Although I said I wasn't an ice guy, I have to say, this ice maker is so damn cool. I bet all the kids will drop their iPads and come watch the ice grow. The Glacier can make 18 ice cubes in one shot and get it done under 15 minutes. So I put 9 ice cubes on each panel and observed how long it takes for a cold spot to show through underneath. In just under 1 minute, we can already see a cold spot develop under the XPS. And this cold spot continued to get colder. But on the VIP, only after 5 minutes, we started to see a cold spot gradually emerging. It took 5 times as long with only half the thickness. So I will say the VIP is legit. It is definitely not just marketing gimmicks. By the way, this plug-and-play thermal imaging camera from Topden is super fun and super useful. I will link it in the description. Because of the vacuum, these panels cannot be cut into shape. As you can see, once punctured, the VIP simply becomes a soft bag of fiberglass. So I believe the Glacier still uses foam installations in many places just to fill in the gaps. To find out the real-world fridge performance, I ran 2 energy consumption tests compared to my Dometic. The first test was cooling down over 4 gallons of water from 85 degrees down to 36. That is a lot of thermal energy, so it is a pretty abusive test. The Glacier cools down a lot faster thanks to its larger 120-watt compressor. You may think this would use a lot more energy, but no, energy is power multiplied by time. Glacier has higher power, so it simply gets the job done in less time. Once I verified the water itself reached 36 degrees, the energy consumption between the two fridges was nearly identical, which means both compressor has similar efficiency. But as you can see, the Dometic's dairy compartment is still way warmer than the set temperature. It was almost too warm to keep the food safe. It will get cold eventually, but it is never in your control. In contrast, the Glacier showed much more uniform temperature throughout. After this first test, I fully charged my Delta II power stations. The second test measures the steady-state energy consumption. After 24 hours, the Glacier used slightly less energy. My garage was pretty hot, ranging between 70 to 90 degrees throughout the day. The Dometic is the top-of-the-line fridge, so I would say the Glacier has a similar top-tier efficiency, even with much thinner walls. If you plan to get the Glacier, I have a 5% discount code in the video description, valid for a limited time. If you are someone who likes having ice, the Glacier will be the perfect fridge in just about every aspect. But for me, I would still love to see a shorter, non-ice making version for those who are limited in space. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.